Welcome to the Practice Squad Podcast, episode 27. I am John. I am joined by my co host, Mark. And this is the very last Practice Squad podcast that is in season for the 2022-2023 NFL season.
The
We're
last of
1 week
season
away.
one, John.
Yep.
Yeah, the last of
The other
season
side of
one.
this, we see you guys next week. We're going to be talking about, who won the Super Bowl and talking about probably a whole lot of free agency moves that I'm sure are going to kind of kick off right away. First one that comes to mind is obviously Derek Carr making all those funny comments on the Pro Bowl. It sounds like he's not going to be in Vegas for sure next year, and he's probably going to be the first guy to move because if Vegas doesn't get rid of him, they owe him a whole lot of money. Versus if they successfully get rid of them. So, yeah,
We got
it'll be
slam
exciting.
packed, dude. The Super Bowl week is just obviously you have all the Super Bowl media, which is crazy packed, and then you have all the free agency stuff already starting to happen. You have draft looks starting to already happen. You get senior games starting to happen. Like it's just everything's starting to happen at once, and it's like the end of this season's happening, and it's the biggest day of the year in sports. And then you have like already trickling into what's the next year going to hold. And the whole offseason is just as crazy. We got, Brady retiring, Rodgers, you got free agency, like you said, the biggest game in America in sports happening on Sunday, all happening in like 1 week.
Yeah, and we'll get into all that, but our guest that we're going to have for this episode can really shed some light on that entire draft process as well and what all of those things are like. So if you'd like to go and intro him.
Yeah, so we're excited to have on Joe Wilson. He was a teammate of mine at Central Michigan. He just recently got done playing in the East-West Shrine Bowl this past weekend, where he was kind of making a name for himself and did a good job there. He's all-MAC player, all-conference player, 3-year starter for the Chippewas, and now he's training and hoping to get his name called on draft day or get a chance with the team here in a few months. So I'm excited to have Joe Wilson, teammate and good friend on the show. What's up, Joel?
How you doing?
Guys? Doing good.
So first question, Joel, John, if you don't mind, I just want to, you're hot off of the whole Senior Bowl, not the Senior Bowl, but the senior game. That's such a unique process, right? Not many people get to be a part of that. And you were invited to the East-West Shrine Bowl where, those are some of the best players in the country all coming together, competing in front of scouts, coaches, going through, like, what does a typical day look like for you, Joel? And what was your experience like, I guess, overall?
Well, typical day there. We were pretty busy, like every single day of the week, So we're down there in Vegas. I'd say the first full day we had, it was wake up call. You got breakfast from 6:30 to like 7:30 or something like that. But if you have the early morning practice, it overlaps with breakfast, so you gotta get down there early. So you get down there for breakfast at like 6:30. Leave on the bus at 7:05, head to practice in the morning. Practice for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then after that, get any treatment that I need done at the facility. Head back. We'd have lunch, meetings, and then we'd have NFL interviews. We do interviews for like 3 hours.
Damn.
We'd be in this big group. Really like by position. So it'd be tight ends, linebackers, and running backs was my group from the East team. And there's all these different conference rooms, and you go into these separate conference rooms like for an hour apiece, and there'd be like 4 to 5 NFL teams in there, and you'd kind of just sit in the center like table, whatever. And then if a team wanted to talk to you, they'd come and grab you, pull you over to their table. You'd have a conversation with them, and you just kind of did that for the next 3 hours of your day.
The most intense job interview there is.
Right? Yeah, the same thing over and over again. So
yeah.
You get done with that, and we'd have dinner, and then right after dinner, you'd have more meetings, and usually a group speaker or some player conference seminar type deal, and then we'd be done around like 8:30 p.m. and then you go to bed, wake up, and do it the next day. So a lot of stuff happens in every day there. So.
When you got an opportunity to talk to some of those NFL teams, like were the questions pretty high level and just kind of trying to get to know you, or were they actually, going more in depth, talking scheme and things like that?
I think in some cases it kind of depended which scout you were talking to. If it was a scout that wasn't really necessarily familiar with you, they'd kind of try to get more background information on you. A lot of it was just making sure that, if any red flags that popped up in the past on a certain player, they'd want to like talk about that, and, get to the bottom of it, see like what actually happened, or see what type of person they are, how it's going to affect the organization or something like that. For me, it was pretty easy because, I never really got in any trouble, stayed out of trouble in college.
Joel didn't have many red flags.
Yeah.
Joel's a good guy.
Yeah.
What was it like, Joe? Obviously the talent level. So, you played in the MAC. You've played against. You were catching touchdowns against Penn State. You've played against Wisconsin. Like, you've played against some high level talent. But I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're surrounded by that many guys that are that gifted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like? Were there a couple of guys that just stood out, like holy shit, this guy is for real? Like, that you had to maybe block or run a route against? Like, was there anybody that just like turned your head, like, dude, this guy's legitimate? Or was it just like you were able to hold your own and do your own thing?
I'd say for the most part, I held my own pretty good. I had that ankle injury in week 9.
Right. Yeah.
So that's my first time doing any of that stuff since November, the start of November, like pretty much October. So I was kind of iffy going into that week because I didn't know if I was even going to make it through the first 2 practices. I just taped it up as much as I could and spatted.
Yeah.
But it ended up being good. As far as like one-on-ones go, it's kind of hard to gauge it because, like, those guys are definitely good. But at the same time, they can cheat the drill. If they know you're running an out-breaking route, they'll just sit hard outside leverage. And so, stuff like that. But I think if there's one person that stuck out to me, it was during the game. The edge DN from Florida. I'm not sure what his name is. Wore a big cowboy collar. Every other DN I blocked, we would run wide zone, and I would just kind of, I just really make them stretch it because they had to contain.
Right.
And, it really wasn't too hard to block him, but that guy just shot straight up field, and he was
tough.
Just messing it up. Yeah, it was just he was a tough one to block. So that was probably the only one.
We had Tyler Conklin on in one of our previous episodes, Joel, and obviously you and him have a great relationship, and he was kind of like your big, he was like kind of like your big brother when you got there. He was kind of like a little bit of the inspiration, I think, for how far you've come, and it was the same thing for me when I got to Central. You kind of shed some light on your relationship with him and training with him and just learning from him and seeing what he's been able to accomplish coming out of CMU. And then seeing what your goals and aspirations are to do the same thing that he's doing.
Yeah. I think it's definitely just cool to be able to see someone from Central, who obviously played the same position, just kind of go out there and make a name for himself. And obviously he's, excelled and done really great on his career so far. He just got his second contract and, he's making the big money now. So
it's a big deal in the league. You get to that second contract.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
As far as our relationship, we're in contact every now and then, especially during this process, I've reached out and asked him a few questions, just making sure I'm doing the right things. And he's done a great job of just, leading me down the right path. As far as that, we're in contact too much, throughout the season, whatever, he'd tell me good job in a couple of games, but I think more so, what he's done for me in my career is just, it's just been, some that I've seen and like, it's kind of made it like, for me, just made it like in my head, like, okay, that's possible. Like I can actually do this,
Right.
Seeing someone come, same program, same position, just going there and excelling. So
same number. It's hard not to draw the comparisons, right? Just the way you guys play, same number, similar size, similar athleticism.
Similar hair. See the one that convinced you to grow it out?
Your facial hair needs some work compared to you're on your way.
I grow it in. No, my tight ends coach always wanted me to grow my hair out. I think you kind of set yourself apart when you got, long hair. People remember you. So
it's a statement. Oh
yeah. It's kind of a tight end thing.
I was about to say like Hawkinson too. Like I just feel like it's a tight end thing for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just look like a big Viking dude on the field, maybe a little more menacing.
Yeah.
And then so, I know you got injured and like you said, end of October this season, but you're having a really hot season to begin with, 44 receptions, 445 yards, 6 TDs. What was it kind of like, coming into Central, having to work your way up and then obviously having a really productive season your last year there? And what was that kind of grind like getting up to that level? And, do you feel like you watched yourself progress year over year, kind of the way that you needed to in order to get to that level?
Yeah, I'd say so. As far as like physically and mentally, it takes a lot to be able to, groom yourself to be able to play at the level that you have to play at. coming in, I played quarterback in high school, and I was like 205 pounds. So, I mean, obviously, I knew I needed to gain weight, get faster, get stronger. But I mean, a big part of football that people don't really realize is, like the mental aspect of it. Camp is hard.
It's a
Bunch of
grind.
screaming at you when you're a freshman is hard. Summer conditioning, winter conditioning, it's hard. It's definitely like it's grinding, and you gotta have a strong will, and you gotta have a lot of mental toughness to be able to make it through that stuff. And even like for like people who don't even play, I mean that's just a tough thing to go through to grind like that, and bleed with your brothers, and then go out there and not play. It's a tough thing to do, and I mean. But I mean, I think throughout the whole thing, I kind of just believed it was part of the process, and that was something I needed to do to be able to get to where I am today. And just over the years, I kind of just saw myself, getting better, getting in the film room more, just taking the coaching that I needed to take, and I had a lot of good upperclassmen around me too along the way. Hunter Buchkowski, Oakley Lavallee, Keegan Kasu. Tony Poljan, Bernard Rainman. There's a bunch of smart guys, good guys.
The tight fam, man.
Tight fam. Yeah, that was our thing, tight fam.
The tight end fam. Dude, the tight end room I was always jealous of because I was like, man, I kind of want to get in there, but like I can't play tight end. Like I gotta get like 5 inches taller.
Yeah, gain about 30 pounds.
Yeah, but the tight fam was like that room, and Coach Tavita Thompson, you mentioned earlier, he does a great job. Probably one of the more underappreciated assistant coaches across Division I football.
Definitely.
He's done a great job, dude. He's produced and he's led these guys, and he brings in guys like Joel as a freshman, and he helps them get to the point Joel's at right now. And he's done it with more guys than just Joel, and he continues to do it. Joel, is there a moment at Central where it's like, and I asked Khalil the same question when we brought him on, that the confidence obviously that you have to get to the point of you're playing at your highest level against people playing at their highest level. Was there like a moment, could have been a practice, could have been in a game, that you made a play or someone said something to you, or you're just like, I can really do this. Like I really have the ability to maybe chase my dream and play professionally?
Mm-hmm. I would say, I mean, a moment of realization for me that I thought I could, actually take it to the next level would probably be just after the 2021 season. Just looking back and looking at the year that I had, and I just knew that my best football wasn't behind me; it was still ahead of me. I started to realize that it could be like a real possibility for me. But the confidence, I think that came with the start of 2021 when we played Missouri, and I'm out there blocking like they're all SEC D end, and I'm just like, this guy's he's no different than a lot of guys I've played against. So I mean. I think it's just that. I mean, that definitely helps with the confidence. Just kind of going in with the mindset that, it's not this all SEC defense. It's just it's just another DN. It's a faceless opponent.
So. Yeah, I mean, you had that in the Washington State game in the Tony the Tiger Bowl. You had a huge touchdown catch, and I remember in terms of just obviously being your teammate for a few years, and that was my first year removed from playing. But I was like, okay, Joel's taking another step. Like I've been gone for a year. But I've clearly missed something. Like Joel's taken even another step in the right direction in terms of where he can go. Watching that game was fun, and that was a great play you made. And then obviously you carried it into your last season. The one thing that was interesting is that Arizona Bowl, the Barstool Bowl, you guys were supposed to play. And talk a little bit about what happened there. I mean, I know you guys traveled to Arizona. The game got canceled. I forget what happened there. And then you guys basically picked up Washington State because their game got canceled, and you were just like, screw it, we'll just play you guys. Talk about what happened there.
So, I mean, we got to Tucson, and then the next day we had practice, and we got on the bus, went to practice. We practiced at some high school field, mountains in the background. It's pretty cool out there. And then we get done with practice, and everybody starts changing. They're getting to the buses, and people start going on their phones and seeing that Boise canceled because of COVID. And none of us had really believed it yet because we didn't really it wasn't official yet.
Right.
And then once we got on the buses, I think it was either Coach Mack or somebody else told us that the game had been canceled and that they were going to do everything they could to look for a replacement team to come in and play against us or another bowl game that got canceled for us to go to. So we didn't really know what to do once we got back to the hotel because we had nothing to game plan for. We didn't know if we were going to play another game or who we were going to play. So we kind of just all came back and stayed on the schedule just with what we were going to do. And then I think later that night, we picked up the Sun Bowl against Washington State because Miami had to drop out too. So next day we started game planning for Washington State. We had like 2 days to game plan against their film, and
so crazy to me.
Yeah, we stayed in Tucson for the next 2 days and practiced there, and then we bussed to El Paso the day before the game. Stayed in the hotel, play the game the next day. So
people don't realize how hard it is to game prep at that level in 2 days and then go out.
That's crazy.
You've been preparing for one opponent who's completely different.
Yeah.
And different players, different, play style on both sides, offense, defense, special teams. In 2 days, having to travel, flip the game prep to a different team, flip your mindset, and then to go out and win the game, right? As a MAC school going in beating a Pac-12 school, like that's obviously tells something about Central's program. Coach McElwain, obviously you guys had a hell of a team. And that team was loaded with a lot of upperclassmen like yourself that were just playmakers and knew how to play the right way.
Right. And I mean, I feel like that's been a theme that we've continued to touch on throughout this podcast is that Central just consistently kind of punches above their weight class, more ways than one with NFL looks and the competition that they hold their weight against and all of that stuff. So that's pretty crazy though. 48 hours of preparation and you guys were able to go out and win it. Hats off to you guys for sure. So
Joel, is there, or go ahead, John.
No. If you had a question, go ahead. I was going to move into NFL talk.
Yeah, I'll ask you one more college question. Is there a stadium, Joel, that or like an environment that you played in that's your favorite from college? I have mine was Wisconsin. Obviously, you had more games than I did once I left. But is there just a stadium, a game day environment that a hostile environment that you went into like, holy shit, this is really what they say it is?
Yeah. Well, I think LSU was probably the coolest stadium I played at.
Death Valley.
But I think Penn State was definitely it was massive and it was so loud. And I think that was probably one of the coolest environments too. I also like playing at Western too because you go in there and everybody hates you.
Everyone hates you.
That's awesome. I was gonna ask too, who you got for the Super Bowl coming up here and what your reasoning is behind that pick.
Oh man. I don't know. I wanted the Bengals to win so bad. But I think I don't know. I think I'd probably have to go with the Chiefs. Just because I still don't know if I can bet against Patrick Mahomes at this point.
He's done too much. That's what I was trying to tell John, Joe. He's done too much to warrant any doubt. I know that his team is not as good as the Eagles. I know that he's not even 100% healthy. I know he's the underdog in this game for some reason, but it's like it's hard to pick against him. It's hard to pick against him.
Like you said, Mark, best player versus best team. That's kind of the dynamic. And then I know you're from Petoskey. Are you a Lions fan then, or do you have a different team? Okay, got you.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
They're gonna do good next year.
Yeah, man, they're on their way up for sure. It's really exciting, and hopefully, they just invest a lot in defense in this draft because obviously, biggest problem area is probably defensive backfield, and hope they can clean that up. And honestly, I think they're not only a playoff team; I think they could actually win quite a few playoff games if they go and clean up their defense. So,
yeah.
And how do you feel as a tight end too? Them trading away Hawkinson and then just spreading the ball around to their tight ends, and like 3 of them had like multiple touchdowns on the season. It's crazy.
That's fine. Hopefully, they bring me in.
Yeah, tight end by committee.
Yeah.
Joel has the hair that Hawkinson had. I mean,
I know. It should be Hawkinson 2.0.
Hawkinson 2.0. Joel, is there a tight end in the league that you enjoy watching, that you take things from their game and apply it to yours?
I wouldn't say there's any in the league that I'm like actively watching their film and trying to like gain some stuff from them. I mean, obviously TC, just some of his top of route stuff, and we both. That one time we trained with Del Fonte Diamond.
Yeah, you guys came out to Adams and worked with him. That was awesome to see all you guys kind of come back and and work out together and just see. We had a couple younger guys that I was coaching, watching Joel and Tyler and learning from their movements and just seeing how they move at their size. And I told a couple of them, I was like, this takes years and years of working, being that big, being able to move that fast and change the direction as quickly as you guys do. I said, like, there's not many guys that size that can do that. And there's a reason that they work at it so much.
Yeah.
Was Prescorn there for that?
Prescorn was there for that. A couple of our other receivers, and it was really cool. Is that the kind of stuff you're working on right now, Joel? Like, as obviously, you finished the senior game, the Shrine Bowl, and now it's like a whole different, I feel like your mind shifts right now. You have kind of like 40 training, physical strength testing. You have to still do interview prep, like all of that stuff. I feel like just intensifies, right? And then it all the way up until, draft and post draft is just prep. What does that look like for you? You have like a schedule, like a plan?
Yeah. I mean, for now, I'm training here in Novi until March 3rd, I think. Then our pro day is March 15th. So I'll go back to Central and train for like the days leading up to that. But I mean, yeah, it is pretty crazy because I'm here doing like not football specific training except for a couple days out of the week. Just trying to get stronger. With my bench press, doing 40 training, short shuttle, 3-cone, all that stuff. It's not really like technical football movements. It's like it's just testing movements, and
right.
You're like full focus on that, and then boom, I'm down to the Shrine Bowl, and now it's straight football again. So now I just flip your mindset again, and interviews and stuff like that, and then now I'm back here and I have to flip it again. So I'm back, just 40 training, all that stuff, just kind of locked in on that, and then when I'm done with that, March 3rd, I'll go back to Mount Pleasant. And I'll kind of sprinkle in some route stuff because for pro day I'll be running routes along with my testing and probably doing some tight end drills. So, I mean, it's a lot of stuff to take in, but
just from your personal field, do you think that like the combine style training is at all indicative to what you're capable of as a player? Because like there's so many guys that, like don't put up crazy numbers and they end up being amazing NFL players or other way around. Like, how do you feel while you're training for that? Like, you're like, is this really, like matter that much other than, it being important for draft reasons?
Yeah, I think it's all kind of BS. I mean,
yeah,
it's just not a lot of things that you do for the 40 combine training that are like direct correlation to how you play the game. And it also is kind of dependent on what position you play. I mean, 40 is good for testing straight line speed, but how often am I running 40 yards straight down the field?
Almost never.
Line,
Yeah, I mean, I always say just put on the game film. Like if you put on the game film, break it down, watch what they do well, watch what they don't do well, see what they, say about their mistakes, their good plays. Like you put on Joel's film, I think it speaks for itself. Like I don't think it's going to completely change someone's mind, who's whether it's a scout or someone who doesn't even know football. If you watch Joel do his workout compared if you just watch the games or just watch the footage.
I mean, that's how I feel like when there's a literal guy in your face that you have to go toe to toe with.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a way better statement to what kind of player you are.
You run like all these tests and they do the times on them, and like how much of a difference is a tenth of a second really? Like the difference between running a 4.6 and a 4.8. It's like that's detrimental on your draft stock.
Totally.
And it's like I couldn't even like 0.2 of a second. Like what is that? It's like I don't know. I don't like the whole aspect of it. I think you should just watch the film and then for the pro day it should be just football drills. But it's like
so
that.
Joel, in any of these interviews, I don't know if you've used this yet. Have you used the fact that you were a quarterback in high school and that there were some trick plays here and there at Central for you to throw the ball a little bit as like I know me and this guy are neck and neck and who you're scouting, but I got a cannon of an arm. Have you used that yet?
No, I haven't used that one yet. They all knew I was a quarterback though, so I mean, they at least know I can throw it.
Oh yeah. If in your next interview they're like, is there something that like we like this guy, we like you guys are neck and neck? You just be like, yeah, I mean, I also can throw bombs. Like I'm like, I can throw a 60-yard dime if you need me to, coach.
Yeah, I might have to use that one.
Oh man. That's funny. All I remember when we had an emergency quarterback situation in college, and like Joel was taking legitimate reps at quarterback. We're like, dude, if it comes down to this, like this is our guy. Like we're gonna ride with Joel at QB. How excited were you for that?
I mean, it was a fine line between excited and kind of nervous because I mean, there's so many checks and stuff you got to do for that.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, it would have been fun.
You handled it. You handled it.
Yeah, I mean,
you were ready to go if we needed you.
You said what?
Yeah.
Oh,
you were ready to go if we needed you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would have had to.
Yeah,
probably would have been better prepared than San Fran's situation, the NFC Championship.
Yeah,
that was rough, man. Like
that sucks. That's tough for them.
It is too, because I was complaining about it last episode a ton because of the fact that it's like I was so pumped to watch that game because I truly do think those are like the two best teams in the NFL, especially from like a trenches standpoint and just being a former offensive lineman. I was really excited for that, and then it's just like it wasn't even a game. Like it's it was over by the first quarter basically, so that bummed me out. Hopefully San Fran bounces back though. What do you think of Kittle's game? Because I know he really prides himself from a blocking perspective of just rocking the shit out of anybody he has to block. Like I know some tight ends, they prefer to just kind of be like, more receiver types, and then other ones are like, nah,
the finesse tight ends.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Kittle's an animal. I think he might be my. I mean, TC's obviously my favorite tight end in the league, but I think aside from TC, he's an animal. He's just when he blocks, his hands are so tight. What people don't realize about blocking is if you have wide hands and someone gets your chest, like you're just done for. It doesn't matter how strong you are. So like, when he stripes dudes up, and he'll get his hands, right there. It doesn't matter where his feet are. Like they can just take him. He can take him anywhere they want to go, and he just drives him right into the ground. It's just,
and he has so much fun with it too.
Yeah.
I think the one clip I don't know if you've seen it where I think he's playing against. I want to say he's playing against the Eagles, and he levels some defensive end. He puts him right on his back, and the guy goes, "Shit, man, I tripped." And he goes, "No, you didn't." It's just like, no, he did not trip.
No, he's just genuinely happy when he's out in the football.
He loves it, man.
Yeah,
he loves playing it.
So good.
He plays it the way it should be played.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Joe, we appreciate you coming on and chatting with us, and we obviously know you got a very busy next couple of months ahead of you. So best of luck with all of that. And, we're hoping that you end up exactly where you want to be in the near future here.
Yeah. Good luck with everything, Joel. Thanks for coming on, and just go show them what you can do, man. We're rooting for you. We're rooting for you, man.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course. Best of luck, dude. See you next time.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.
Awesome having him on. And yeah, I mean, Mark, just like, again, like so many cool stories that you've gotten to be connected to through your time at Central, obviously. And, every single guy you've had on too has just been awesome to interview. And also like, just so cool seeing the journey of like, again, I love the fact that we get the opportunity to shed light on people's stories where like, it's like, okay, clawing your way all the way up and what that journey looks like, because most of the time people just see, guys in the league and they're like, oh, like, God-given talent, this was meant to happen. And they don't know what a freaking grind it is to get there,
Yeah. I mean, Joel's battled through injuries. He came in, there were some guys ahead of him when he first got to Central, had to work his way up the depth chart, just like anybody else. And then the potential's always been there. I think he's known that. Coaches kind of told him that from the beginning when he got there, like you could be a really special player at this position if you just keep working. And that's what he's done. He's just kept working. He's nothing but a nice, good, kind person off the field. And, he just worked his ass off, and he's going to continue to do it for the next few months and see what happens with the draft, or, and see what happens and see if he makes a team next year, and the rest is, going to be up to him, right, and make the most of it. But it's just awesome to see something like that get an opportunity, and just to see the process, right, and hear about the process. Like, not many people get to go play in a senior game, like with the best talent in America, all coming together, competing in front of scouts. I mean, interviewing with NFL teams for 3 hours a day for a full week.
Dude, I'd be having a heart attack. Like, honestly, I'd be like working myself up so bad in that situation, especially like you said, like 3 or 4 hour sessions of that. It's like, it's tough, man, got to make
after practice. And then, You got to go get treatment. It's a whole thing, man. But
Yeah.
it takes a special person to go through that and to make it out the other end and make it into the league. And it's just, I hope the best for Joel. And it was awesome that he came on and kind of shared his stories there.
Absolutely. So obviously Super Bowl is the biggest headline item that we have to talk about, but do you want to talk about kind of some of the free agency stuff and some of the other news events before we get into it, and we'll kind of finish the
there's all
episode
kinds
out
of
on Super
there's
Bowl
all kinds
talk.
of smaller media events going on, but I think we'll cap this episode with a Super Bowl, mega Super Bowl talk. We'll get into that, but let's start with Tom Brady, because I think he warrants the first conversation. Him retiring. First question I ask you, John, and then we'll get into some Tom Brady memories and give him his flowers. Is this the end of Tom Brady playing football?
Dude, and I said this last time when he retired, and it ended up not being a real retirement. I'm gonna be kind of pissed if it's fake again. I was, because when he unretired last time, I was like, dude, I thought that we were finally relieved of having to deal with Tom Brady. And again, this is not disrespect to Tom Brady. It's just I've been watching you play football literally my entire life. You were drafted the year that I was born. I'm ready. I'm right. He's drafted what, 1999, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So literally, I've been my entire life. I have known Tom Brady playing football, and I'm just good on all that, man. I have loved watching him play. I've loved all of the moments, but I felt like this past year, was not the wisest decision. We obviously see how that worked out for his marriage and things like that. And so yeah, if you were to, long story short, if you were to unretire again, I'd be like, really?
I would also, your word only means so much. Once you unretire a third time or a second time, I'm sorry, you're just like, dude, I would be partially happy because I would love to see him play more. I think he still has more in the tank. He took a not very good team to the playoffs, and it wasn't his fault that they weren't winning games,
Yeah, I mean, he was passing attempts higher than any other time he's been in his career, so it obviously wasn't him.
There were bigger issues.
In my head, I thought he was going to play another year, and you and I
I didn't expect,
speculated that he doesn't have a wife telling him he needs to retire anymore. He's got nothing else to do now but play football if he wants to keep playing football. So it did surprise me that he retired this year. But now that it's done, now that it's said and done, I'm going to be annoyed if he comes back a second time. That would be.
I really thought we were going to see him for another year at least. I actually thought he probably had a few years left in him, just with everything that happened. And I don't know. I do think he's probably done for good. He seemed genuine. He seems to have other things that he wants to start to go and pursue, like broadcasting and his obviously Brady brand.
Well, what's interesting is that he isn't going to be broadcasting until 2024. I don't know if you saw that, but it will be the 2024-2025 season, which I'm personally stoked about because of the fact that if he came this year, 2023, he would have taken Greg Olson's job. And Greg Olson just doesn't deserve that. I'd argue he's the best player commentator out of everybody right now.
Right now, right now he's doing, I would say, very well. I think Greg Olson's really good at what he does.
Yeah. So, and it's just Tony Romo's fallen off a little bit, but as far as Greg goes, I just feel like there's a good level of balance and not ripping into guys, seeming genuinely interested, and then obviously having all that knowledge, of just being able to explain the game in a way that's palatable for the average listener and the average person. So, and look, I think maybe Tony Romo will bounce back. He just seemed kind of not as into it this year as he was in prior years, because you and I talked about it. He's probably my favorite commentator.
I'm
the
first year that he was there, man. I'm sold on Romo.
That's what I was gonna say though. Is he was probably one of my favorite commentators. The first year he was in, and then every year after that, I'm Like, what is this dude
He's
doing?
either too much or he's too little. And the too much is like cringy, like some of the stuff that he says. Like he'll get excited after like a 2-yard gain and he'll act like it was like the craziest thing he's ever seen. Like, and it's like, okay, great, you're showing enthusiasm, but it has to be warranted. Like the best are like the natural calls. Like Gus Johnson always does a great job when there's a big play. You can feel that he's genuinely like, oh my God, right? And you can feel that. Tony Romo will force that. He'll do that on a play that doesn't warrant the big moment call. And I mean, maybe he's just got to get a feel for it because he's only been doing it for a few years. I don't know. I'm kind of sold on it. Just like Romo's playing career. Dude, he came in underdog, people loved him. Started off kind of hot once he got his chance in Dallas, and then by the end of his Dallas career, most people hated him in the league.
They were definitely spent on him for sure. And yeah, I mean, while we're on the Brady topic, before we move on, I guess he's taken after his old buddy Antonio Brown too, and just like immediately posting naked pictures of himself on social media.
I don't know what's good with that. I'll bash him on that, but I do want to give him his flowers. I mean, the guy, he's the best to ever do it. I feel like it's undisputed. I think we got to give him that at least. He's an inspiration in terms of just not even just an athlete, a competitor. I think he's him and Michael Jordan 1A, 1B in terms of greatest competitors to ever live, that we've on a national scale that we've ever seen. He was not gifted physically. He was an underdog his whole life. He was told you're not good enough. And he won a Super Bowl in 3 different decades. He played for over 20 seasons.
He had 3 separate Hall of Fame careers. If you break down his 20s and 30s and 40s, like I thought that was
incredible,
very cool.
Man. And then just when you thought Tom Brady couldn't do more than what he's already done, he could just continued to prove people wrong. That's all he did his entire career. Nobody thought he was going to go to Tampa and just in year 1 win a Super Bowl. And I think that cemented him. That separated him, I think, in terms of, was it just the Patriots dynasty and Belichick and him as a duo, or is it Brady? And him going and leaving and doing it by himself within 1 year, it just cements him as the greatest to ever do it. I mean, that was like if Michael Jordan would have left and went to the Wizards and won a championship with the Wizards in his 40s. Like, he couldn't do that.
Did you hear? So, there's always been like this speculation that, Belichick and Brady like didn't end on good terms or they don't actually get along. And really what I think it is that Belichick's just the most like stone cold all the time, like deadpan guy.
Yeah.
But he was on a podcast this past week. And like, first of all, like that's the first time I've ever heard like enthusiasm in Belichick's voice. Like he sounded like a grandpa kind of like telling a like campfire story to his grandkids. And what he was talking about was just like Brady approaching him and being like, "Hey coach, like in order to set the tone, in practices in film sessions, like dig into me just as much as you dig into all the other guys, whether or not it's warranted. Because if they think that, I'm above everybody else and I can't get criticism or things like that, like that's going to affect the locker room. So like, make sure that, you dish it out to me as well." And like, first of all, I think Belichick being the type of coach he is, like that was probably just music to his ears, first of all.
Sure.
But second of all, I think it does just show like Brady was a teammate to everybody all the time. And I think that's why he had so much success, not just being an underdog and being a competitor and, probably being one of the smartest guys on the field at any given moment, but also just like making sure that like the locker room was in a good place and that he was actually, leading. It's very hard to lead a group of grown men. An NFL locker room is a very diverse place with a lot of people with a lot of different personalities and egos and backgrounds and all of that. So I think, to drive a stable ship for 20 years in New England and win, 6 Super Bowls there while you're doing it.
Incredible,
like,
man.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you would have told me that whole story of Tom Brady's career, and like if I knew nothing about football, I almost want to like find someone that knows literally nothing about football, tell them this and say, true or false? Like, is this a made up story or did this actually happen? I'd be like, no, dude, that's a fairy tale. No one does that. No one wins 6 Super Bowls with one team, one coach, all these different players that go through different receivers, different defenses, leaves, does it again with a different team. Has 3 separate Hall of Fame careers in one career. Like the comeback games, the 19-0 season, all the stuff or the 18-0 season that lost to the Giants. But just the records that he shattered, like
that year was the helmet catch year, right?
Yeah, David Tyree helmet catches.
Which again, that was my first Super Bowl that I personally remember because we were, I think, 9-ish years old around that time.
Yeah,
And
I remember they did the coin, like you would go and put like a quarter on who you thought was going to win in our elementary school, and it was like, we were raising money for charity, and they're like, oh, you put a quarter on who you think's going to win, and everybody picked the Patriots, and I just remember rooting for the Giants at the time because I just didn't even know, I just wanted the underdog to win, and that was probably the first Super Bowl I actually could explain to you what actually happened and remember and had any sort of football knowledge while watching it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, and I mean, I think probably from around that moment, I was pretty hooked too. Right. And that's the cool part is like, we're going to be telling our kids, hopefully in the far future, I don't know, that like, Tom Brady was like that guy that we remember watching play, and like year after year after year after year, we just had to watch that dude tear it up in the playoffs over and over again. So it is cool. This is probably the most Tom Brady love that I'm ever going to give for the rest of my life.
It's so weird to me, John, because you're a Michigan man.
Yeah, it's just, dude, it's just, to me, like, I feel like, okay, there's a couple of things with it. One, you talk about underdog, and I guess that was true at the beginning of his career. But again, I think you have to just eventually get tired of 23 years of winning all the time. Like that it does get a little bit stale, right? And I don't care who the player is, right? And again, this is not hate on Tom Brady. I mean, like, I was right there rooting for him in 28-3, all of that stuff. Don't get me wrong. And I'm going to speak of him in high regard, for the future, but it just got a little bit stale. And then, it's funny. He's not a media personality. So I am curious kind of on how this like next phase of his career is going to go. Cause like, I don't know if you get this impression, but like he interviews kind of awkward. Like he's an interesting guy.
I think he's one of those people that's good at anything he wants to do. I think anything he's passionate about, he's going to exceed expectations. So I think he's going to come in and actually do a very good job of announcing and broadcasting.
$400 million, I'm sure, is going to help with that entire.
That won't hurt. I just think he's passionate. I also think he'll last maybe 1 or 2 years before getting into coaching.
You're probably not wrong.
He's probably, he's the smartest, one of the smartest dudes of all time in terms of players. And he clearly has a mind for winning, not just being. I mean,
could you imagine him as like a quarterback coach for the Patriots, or
an offensive coordinator? I mean, he could be. He basically called the offense in Tampa like this. I mean, a lot of the checks and stuff like were him. So
yeah,
I could see him being a very successful coach. I think he'll be a fine broadcaster. He's the greatest player to ever do it in the sport, and I don't think that'll ever change. I don't think anyone's going to touch.
Nobody will ever get close to what he's accomplished in this sport. I think not just for the rest of our lives, but for the rest of the NFL. Like I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, moving to, I guess, another kind of interesting story. Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show today and he always kind of has like these weird retreats and getaways that he does. Like
this is the weirdest one yet, though, I think.
Yeah, and I'll kind of set the stage a little bit. Like a couple years ago, it was ayahuasca, which he started talking about. That was a thing that he did this past season, but it was something that he actually did a couple years back, and then just started talking about it because he got interviewed by Joe Rogan or whatever. So that was like, okay, like, so Aaron Rodgers in the offseason is tripping on plants. Okay, cool. And then the season before that, what was it called? A panchakarma is what was his like big off-season cleanse, which I don't know if you remember.
Isn't that where you give him? Isn't that where you get like an enema?
But yeah,
like
you basically drink a bunch of fluids, and the next 12 hours or whatever, you're on the toilet both ends, like going out in both directions. Just your whole system is getting.
Did I dream that, or did he like openly talk about on Pat McAfee like he had like there was someone there that gave him like an enema as to like kickstart the whole thing? No, I don't want to like Google what everything a panchakarma necessarily entails, but I don't think you're wrong. Like I think it's a bunch of fluids going in and a bunch of fluids coming out. That's where I'll leave it.
So, okay, weird thing number 2 that Aaron Rodgers does in his free time in the offseason. And now we have weird thing number 3, which is he is apparently for the next 4 days this next week going to lock himself in a small house that is pitch black and get fed through like a little slit. And that's it. And no human interaction, no like hobbies or like reading or like anything, just pitch black with your own conscience for 4 days. And like, I think a beat writer for the Lions like posted, he's like, it's almost like the richer you get, like forms of enlightenment are like you just pretty much like condemning yourself to what looks like a prison sentence. Like, it's like he's spending a boatload of money to literally be treated like a prisoner in like solitary confinement for 4 days. I don't get it.
You talk about Tom Brady and his willingness to go to Belichick and be like, hey, make fun of me, correct me, be just as hard on me as you are as all these other players because it'll make our team better. And then you look at Aaron Rodgers and you're like, what are you doing to make this work? Well, you told the team that you don't want to be here anymore. So the offseason is basically dead. If he does stay as a Packer, which probably is not going to happen at this point, he's ruined all relationships. He's not getting better as a team. And his idea of what can I do to make myself better and my team better? I'm going to lock myself in a room for 4 days in the darkness and something's just going to come to me. Like it's going to show itself where I'm supposed to go, what's going to happen. I don't know, man. He's a weird dude. I like watching him play. I think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever do it. But there's a reason he's got 1 ring compared to someone who's probably less talented than him having 7. And
yeah, I don't disagree with you. And like I've always like I think the media loves to hate on Aaron Rodgers, and so I find myself I think defending him because like, you know, I feel like Brady's like this like star child that can do no wrong in the eyes of the NFL media, and then Aaron Rodgers is like the like anti Tom Brady. Like he's like this other really good quarterback, but like he's just this weird guy that is easy to hate on. But like, and that's exactly it though, is that like he's just a weird dude. Like in the same way that Brady's kind of weird for all of his reasons, like Rodgers is just like a unique breed of human being, 100%. And like he doesn't like, I know football is a passion of his, obviously, and I know he's a huge competitor. Like those are things that have to go with playing at the level that he does as well as he does. But I don't know if he doesn't really throw at all in the offseason. He doesn't do any football training whatsoever in the offseason. He just kind of like checks out for 6 months and then comes back. Like those kind of behaviors, I feel like you're right. Like maybe they are the difference between him having 3 rings and, you know, beating San Fran in a couple of those NFC championships versus, you know, having the one that he does and very early in his career and then not being able to get back there.
Yeah, because no one can argue the talent. You know, the talent's there. It's, you know, especially at the quarterback position, there's so many things. I mean, there's a reason they do these interviews and stuff that Joel talked about. It's because there's way more to once you get to the professional level, everybody's good. Everyone's fast. Everyone has crazy arm talent. Everyone can read a coverage. And it's like, okay, but how do you how do you get a player who's doing okay to be great? How do you get him to run a route this way? How do you get the chemistry down? How do you understand the timing of certain plays, when to check, when not to check? How do you have control of a locker room? How do you have relationships with people, coaches you don't like, coaches you do like all that stuff matters in terms of winning. You might beat some bad teams, but you're not going to win a Super Bowl with any sort of cancer in the locker room or issues going on, you know?
Like, and he defended himself even like not showing up to summer workouts, which like this is a thing that players of his status do. Like there's nothing wrong with him necessarily not showing up to summer workouts. People were like, oh, you got all these young receivers. Like, wouldn't it be like nice to throw around with them? And he's like, oh, like summer workouts, they're going to be using that to like learn the scheme and get like their footing underneath them. And it's like, yes, that's true. I'm sure that
you can help.
I was about to say, like, I'm sure them building chemistry with you would also really help a lot of those things. So, you know, it goes both ways, obviously. And like, I think he cares a lot about the MVPs and all of that stuff. And, you know, you don't hear as much like stress around the fact that he's only gotten 1 ring. So I don't know. I as much as like, I know, like, again, Tom Brady's like the star child and Rodgers is the heel. Like there is a reason for that to some degree. I just think it's overblown in both directions.
John, do you think he's just gonna sit in that room and it's just gonna be like that "Hello, Darkness, My Old Friend" song playing,
Oh,
like for
totally.
4 days? Like he's just gonna be sitting there. Like I feel like you're gonna instantly regret that. Like it sounds like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do my 4 days and it's all gonna come to me. I'm gonna know exactly what my future holds. But I feel like
Dude,
he's just gonna do
you
like
get 1 hour in there, I feel like
I
you
would
got to be
lose my
like,
mind.
yeah. So like, don't get me wrong. I get the utility of like, talking about what we're talking about. My cat's going nuts. I might have to get off camera for a second here just to kick her out. But anyways,
Do whatever you gotta
like,
do.
like to me, like when I'm going to bed at night, right? Like, the 30 minutes where I'm unwinding and it's silent and it's dark and there's no distractions. Like I have some pretty good ideas and like I'll write them down in like my phone or whatever. And like, cool. Like I see the utility in like having silence and darkness and whatever. But like 4 days, like what on day 3 are you thinking about that like, you didn't think about in day 1, So I'm not sure. I'm gonna let my stupid cat out, but go ahead and respond to that, and I'll be listening.
Yeah, I'll rant a little bit more about the Rodgers in a dark room for 4 days. Before we get into, we'll talk about Sean Payton in a second here and what he said about Russell Wilson. But um, it's just, I just find it so weird that he's so public about all of this. Is all stuff that he could do on his own, with no one ever knowing about it, and he's chosen to come and speak about it because I think he does. Part of him likes the attention. He can't even hide it at this point anymore. He was at the Pro-Am this weekend. He won it, of course, because he's good at everything. He's just one of those people. But he's golfing, and at every single green, all the crowd is like chanting Raiders chants, or some of them are chanting Jets. But he's like, you could just tell he's smiling. He loves the attention. He
He
loves
loves
being
the
wanted.
attention, and
And I guess who
he loves
doesn't?
acting
But
like he doesn't care.
yeah, right, like, oh, I don't
It's
care.
totally his brand.
The interview, the girl asks him, she's like, do you have a favorite color or favorite city? Maybe beating around the bush of like, what team do you want to go to? And he goes, he smiles and he looks up and he loves to answer the questions the same way. And he's like, well, I think the loudest today was Raiders fans. And it's like, dude, is that going to affect your decision? What the fans are doing? It's just
Oh,
he
that's
just
so good.
likes to.
Well,
He
I
just
think like
likes to.
3 years ago, he figured out with that one, post game interview after they lost to Tampa, he figured out that he could just be vague about his intentions for the next, 3 months. And the NFL media covers every single thing he does and says for those 3 months, as long as he just keeps it vague and, you don't really know what's going to happen next. So I think once he figured that out, he's like, oh, all I got to do is like not tell anybody what I'm going to be doing next season. And everything that I do and say is like literally mulled over with like a microscope by all the media personalities. This is awesome. I'm just going to keep doing this every year, regardless. He might know exactly what he's going to do next season, the day after they lost against the Lions, but he's not going to say that, right? He's going to wait 2 months to say anything about it.
He keeps saying too, John, he's like, well, being done playing isn't off the table. Well, you're not going to retire the same year as Tom Brady because you want to have your own Hall of Fame moment. And if Tom Brady's is the same as yours, you're not even going to be talked about. So he's not going to do that. He wants his own shining moment in 5 years when he's inducted as a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, he's not going to retire. He keeps talking about he's not going to retire.
No, he's not. Raiders or Jets, I think, are probably the two places
options.
he goes. And look, it's to me, it's like one is the do I want a Super Bowl option, and the other one's like, do I want to go somewhere else and have some fun for the season after that? Because the Raiders are not a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl. They're not even.
They're close. They're close though. They're close.
Defensively, they're not there. I don't think they're there defensively.
But they have some guys on defense, and if they fix up their secondary, you have Max Crosby and Chandler Jones. Like that's two of the very best. And then they are. And Aaron Rodgers is still at the top of his game when he's connecting with receivers. And you put
totally. Offensively, they would be just fine. Defensively, and look, what's plagued Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay for most of his career is the defense can't hold up their end of the bargain. Well, the Jets have probably a top 3 defense in the league going into this year, and a damn good offense too.
I think either way, he goes to either of those teams, they are legitimate threats, right? And if he's
Totally.
the only difference, it's just harder, right? If he goes and plays against Mahomes twice a year, Herbert twice a year,
That's what I'm trying
and
to
now
say is like, is he going
Sean
to make
Payton,
it through
who
the
knows if
gauntlet?
Russell Wilson and Sean Payton's are they going to be a threat? I mean, that defense is obviously very good, and
That's a great segue too, because there is a Sean Payton kind of headline ever since he's been, hired at the Broncos. Is he was getting interviewed and he was like, "Oh, it was like Team 3 going to be allowed in the building?" And like, for those that don't know, Team 3 is Russell Wilson's personally hired like coaching, training, health staff, and they were in the building last year, doing whatever little side stuff that Russ wants them doing with him when he's at practice and things like that. And Sean Payton, first of all, seemed like annoyed about the question and could not have shot it down faster. He was like, "No, we're not doing any of that." Like, Russell Wilson is his own player, but he's a part of this team, and he doesn't need a whole separate staff to come attend practices to cater to his every need. Like, that's just not going to happen. So, look, I love Sean Payton setting the tone there, and obviously that dude knows a thing or two about winning football games. So I'm sure what he says is going to go as the new head coach. But it is interesting, right? Because I'm sure Russ doesn't totally love that answer. I mean, front facing, he's going to be a team player, and he's going to be like, whatever coach says goes and all that stuff. But like, that's already kind of building some tension in that relationship, right? And Sean Payton and Drew Brees worked so well together because of the fact that like they had really good chemistry, right? They were kind of inseparable, and things fell apart basically the moment that Brees left and Peyton kind of, didn't have that relationship, So I'm just curious, right? Because we talked about like, man, is Sean Payton going to be able to fix this? And like, well, I agree with his sentiment in that statement. I'm sure that's not getting to a great first step with Russell Wilson, and they probably need to make a lot of progress over these next couple of months to get him in a spot where they have a good relationship, good chemistry, and are ready to win some football games.
Yeah, I'm with you, John. I actually think it's going to go awfully terribly. I think it's going to be horrible. I think it's going to ruin Sean Payton's name and image as a coach, and everything he accomplished in New Orleans is going to be like, but his time in Denver was, because Russell Wilson's past. He's past it. Like, there was Russell Wilson that can win you games, and then what we saw last year, like, even if Russell Wilson does improve, which he will with Sean Payton, he's nowhere near where he needs to be to win in that division and to win. And I've said it before, part of why I thought it failed with Hackett is because the system they were in does not cater what Russell Wilson's strengths are. And Sean Payton's system is the same as Nathaniel Hackett. It's the same offensive game plan, same style. It worked with Drew Brees because Drew Brees thrives in that. Russell Wilson and Drew Brees are very different players besides their size. It's the only similarity, right? Russell Wilson's at his best when he's scrambling around, making plays, being athletic out of the pocket. And it's not what Drew Brees was. And that's not what the Saints offense was all those years. I don't see this working. I see this being ugly.
Yeah, and then them losing their defensive coordinator is not insignificant either.
I think the defense will be fine, but I just think they're past like fixing, dude. And I think them bringing in Sean Payton, I hope the best because he's a good guy and he was a great coach for so many years, and it'd be cool to see him turn it around. But it's a tall ask for anybody, and I don't think there's many.
The whole situation reeks of desperation, right?
Yeah.
How many draft picks can we give away, and how much money can we give away to two freaking guys that apparently are going to be like Jesus coming into our program and fixing everything and making everything right again? Like, that's not how this works, right? The Rams got really, really lucky when they made that play, and I would say that they were half as risky with it than the Broncos were. I mean, the Broncos traded three players, 3 first-round draft picks, and what, $300 million plus for 2 guys.
Oh my, yeah, it's and one of them's not even playing. You know what I mean? One of them's the Rams thing, like, you give them credit because they pulled it off and they won one, right? And then you saw what happens the very next year. But dude, think about how close the Rams were to not winning one. I mean, Stafford throws that should have been interception against the 49ers. They shouldn't even have gone to the Super Bowl. So it's like, dude, you were a couple plays away from putting all of that into your team and not having a ring. And no one remembers teams that went to the NFC Championship. Sorry.
And then it's objectively risky, which I think all of us knew. And then we saw, like you said, in real time, how quickly a team implodes after that, which it's okay. They got the ring, whatever. Like, but you have to be comfortable with that too. Like that, if you're going to trade all of your picks, which are young talent, young, cheap talent that you need to keep a team sustainable, all of your cap space on superstars, like, then what happens when those guys get older or want more money or, things just aren't the same? And there isn't that young talent to fill in the gaps, right? And everybody's kind of playing selfishly and things aren't going the way that they
John,
were last year. It's tough.
if you want to take the elevators to success, right? That's great. It's easy. You walk out. Sometimes you're in the Super Bowl and you win it, right? But sometimes the elevator gets stuck, right? Stairs aren't going to get stuck. It might take
Sure.
you longer. It might be harder. You might be a little sweaty when you get up to the top, but you're not.
Well,
the stairs aren't. You're not going to get
that's
stuck in
the
the
approach
stairs.
the Lions are taking, right? They
Yeah,
loaded
they're
up
taking
on
the damn
draft
stairs.
capital. They're being real
Yeah.
cautious. They're not going crazy with their cap space, and once they get to a point, if next season is the point that they get to being not only a playoff team, but let's say a playoff team that wins
Contender.
playoff games, right? A contender, sure. Once they get to that point, I have no concerns whatsoever about them being able to do that again next year and the year after that and the year after that. But if they got to that point and they, traded 40, $50 million away to, go get DeAndre Hopkins and, go get Jalen Ramsey and a bunch of other dudes and just get them in the building and then they're a contender that year, I would have a lot more concerns about every year after that, right? You don't have draft picks, you don't have cap space, you're in trouble. So we can move on from that one. There's probably one more thing I want to talk about before Super Bowl talk, because I think this is massive, is the Vikings hiring Flores as their DC. Like, that team offensively was in a really good situation, and their defense was just horrible. Literally 32 out of 32. They were the worst defense in the league, and it showed in the playoffs. Flores had he had a bad run in Miami, but he's a damn good coach and a damn good defensive coach. I'm thinking if they get him, a couple guys draft capital or cap wise in that room, he'll be able to coach them up to be more competitive. And, just being Lions fans, I think that's a serious threat, right? Like, I'm not scared of Green Bay, really. I think we can sweep Green Bay next year and the Bears in our sleep, honestly, especially if Rodgers isn't there. But Vikings, if they have a better defense, they're a serious threat. And personally, I'd like to see the Lions win the NFC North next year. So
yeah, I agree with you. The interesting thing too with the Vikings is they don't have a bad defensive roster wise. Like, they have some pieces that are really, really good. I mean, they got Zadarius Smith, Patrick Peterson. They have a couple weapons like Harrison Smith's a star, and they just didn't play well and they weren't coached well. And schematically, they just got torched week after week. They could not stop the run. They could not stop the pass. You bring in a guy who knows what he's talking about and has had success as defensive coordinator and has had some success as a head coach. He's well respected around the league, and players that, when players respect their defensive coordinator, they're going to play hard for that guy, and he's going to earn their respect, I think, rather quickly, as he's done his whole career. The players are going to play for him, and they're going to realize how close they are to being a legitimate contender. The offense is there. You said it. It was there all year. You fix the defense, you're a legitimate contender. And that was a huge get for them. I think you're right in saying that. And it's definitely a threat to the Lions. Probably the only threat in the division of the Lions, because it doesn't look like Rodgers is going to be a Packer. So,
yeah, if I were to, out of the three buckets, right, not playing next year, returning as a Packer and going somewhere else, I think my money's not going somewhere else for him. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, the Packers have said they want to get rid of him. Rodgers has been pretty clear he'd rather not be there. I feel like at this point it's just a matter of time, 4 days in a dark room, and who knows what's going to happen.
He wants to embrace the darkness and go to the Raiders. Well, we'll see what happens with that. Okay, so look, we got 20-ish minutes to talk about the biggest game of the year. America's biggest game, the game that we declare ourselves world champions of, even though we are the only country that plays the sport professionally.
It should be a damn holiday, John.
It should
be.
be.
Sick and tired of it.
Super Bowl Monday should be a damn holiday.
Yes.
100%.
It should be a 2-day thing. Because Sundays are Sundays, but it should be a damn
4th
holiday.
of July, great, right? Like, founding fathers, going and winning our independence from the British. That's awesome. But what did we do with that culture that they gave us the freedom to establish? We got football, and football is our favorite thing. And so, in my opinion, Super Bowl Sunday might be more American than the 4th of July. And
Even
I think
people that don't like football watch the Super Bowl and watch the commercials and get together and do like the Super Bowl is a damn holiday and it should be treated as such.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So, the first tweet that we're going to take a look at, just as far as like, whatever Super Bowl speculation, this is crazy, right? Chiefs 16-3, 546 point, 6 All Pros, including a Kelsey, AFC's number 1 seed. The Eagles 16-3, 546 point, 6 All Pros, including a Kelsey, NFC's number 1 seed. From how this team has performed for this entire season plus the postseason, they are literally, statistically speaking, the same, right?
It's ridiculous. I couldn't believe when you sent me that it was real.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Ridiculous.
But the thing is that these teams are so different, right?
They are very different.
I feel like, and we'll get into this, right? Pat Mahomes is the identity of KC's offense, and it doesn't seem like it totally matters the weapons around him based off of what we've seen this season. They lost Tyreek. Everybody was concerned about that. They filled in with a bunch of like B grade receivers, and everything's fine. Why? Because the guy at the helm is making it work. Exactly what you saw with Tom Brady in New England, right? Didn't need to go nuts on superstars. He's got Kelsey, and he's got 3 decent receivers around him and a good running back. We're good to go.
And he makes everyone better.
He makes everyone better. Exactly. Yeah. And then, their defense, I would say, is like a 7 out of 10, maybe, right? Like they're middle of the road. They're not bad. They're not, I'd say, like, the worst defense, but I wouldn't say that it's like a staple. You look at the Eagles, right? Hurts is a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but it's the players around him and the system that is making him as good as he is. They have arguably not only the best offensive line in the league, they probably have the best offensive line that we've seen in several years. Mark and I both covered it at length last week at how incredible they are. He's got amazing receivers, amazing run game, and then a rock solid defense. All 3 parts, right? Their front seven's amazing, and their defensive backfield is disgustingly good between Slay and CJ Gardner-Johnson, who the
Bradbury,
Saints let go. Yeah, exactly. So very different teams. I'm curious, Mark, who do you have and why?
Well, let me ask you this first, John. Okay. I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to pop off some questions. You just one word, you give me an answer. Okay. And it's going to be, I'm going to name the different position groups. You tell me which team has the better position group. You ready? Offensive line.
Eagles.
Defensive line.
Eagles.
Secondary.
Eagles.
Linebackers.
I'll give that one to KC.
Okay. Running game. So running backs.
KC.
Okay. And now tight end.
Eagles. Oh, well, KC. Sorry.
Okay. No. And then quarterback.
Quarterback KC. Receivers too. Who I would give
receivers.
To Eagles. I would go Eagles.
So it's pretty much Eagles at every single position as a whole, besides tight end and quarterback, right?
More or less, yeah.
Right. And I think most people would agree with that. And I'm still going to pick the Chiefs. And I've thought about this, and I didn't decide till today. And I will be posting many shorts, TikToks. John will be posting as well because we'll see what his opinion is on this game. But I'm actually going to go with the Chiefs. And the reason really behind it is I think the Eagles are the better team. But Mahomes is built to beat a team that's better than them because he's the best player and he's playing the most important position. I also think that when you look into the coaching side of things, once it gets to a Super Bowl, the coaching really becomes a factor. It's 2 weeks. You've showed so many of what you try to hide from other teams. You've shown. This is an interesting thing too. I just think Andy Reid is so much smarter than Nick Sirianni, and I just feel like the Chiefs are better coordinators, head coach. They've been there. They've done that. The players are a little more experienced in terms of Super Bowl. The Eagles don't have many guys that are still on that team from the year they went to the Super Bowl and won it. The Chiefs have a lot of their roster back from the year that they won it, and they were just in it again against Tampa and lost. So they've experienced it multiple times. That's a huge thing too, right? Because if you haven't played in a Super Bowl, it's a whole different thing, right? in a moment like that. So I think coaching is going to matter. And I just can't go against Patrick Mahomes. I just can't do it. And Jalen Hurts is, he's had a great year, but I just don't know if he's built for that moment. And they're going to dare him to throw the ball like San Francisco was going to dare him to throw the ball. And he didn't throw the ball that great against San Francisco, for being honest. And I know they just tried to run the ball and they were having success. So why throw it? But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that against Kansas City. And I don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to be able to outplay on the biggest stage in the world Patrick Mahomes.
Look, all valid reasons. And one thing I love about the NFL is kind of the narratives that come out of it. And obviously, this picture that we're showing here is that, right, is not only was Sirianni on Andy Reid's coaching staff at one point, but Andy Reid let him go. So it's very interesting little grudge match going. Obviously, there's always some kind of revenge game in most big NFL matchups, but I think this is an interesting one. Absolutely. And I'm excited to see how that works out, right? Because as you said, Andy Reid has a lot of Super Bowl experience, and Sirianni has basically none. So I'm right, and not to
the players too, John. The players too.
Yeah, I mean, KC as a whole has a lot of Super Bowl experience, and the Eagles, at least this roster, right, doesn't have quite as much. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Super interesting. And then I want to talk about. Oh, I think the Eagles. Yes, I think the Eagles are going to win it because of the fact that you said, I think they're just a better team on all the phases. But look, the biggest thing to me is the biggest weakness that KC had when they played Tampa in the Super Bowl 2 years ago was that their offensive line, really just the trenches in general. Tampa was better in the trenches, and I think the Eagles are better in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And I've seen this happen before where the KC was losing the trenches battle on both sides of the ball and they lost the game and it wasn't close, right? Like Tampa blew out KC. I can't remember the exact score, but I think watching that game, it was over by the second half, right? It was.
Yeah.
So, and that's really, I think that's the biggest reason is I do think that Pat Mahomes has an amazing clutch factor to him, but I also think if he's running for his life and you can't get to Jalen Hurts, it doesn't matter. Especially, we don't know what that situation is with his ankle. So, and look, I'm not going to use that as the main thing against him. That's my very last talking point on why I think that they might lose this game, but it's still a factor, obviously. The other thing that I want to take a look at is, this is interesting. Shout out Michigan. Because 4 players for a Midwestern state. I mean, Ohio is 7. We're not going to talk about that. 4 players. That's pretty cool. I didn't realize that we had that many between the 2 teams. And I'm trying to think who are the 4 people from Michigan.
Mike Dana from Central Michigan's on the Chiefs defensive end. He was one of my teammates. I don't know on the Eagles. Oh, Avonte Maddox on the Eagles is from Detroit. Played at, I think, East English or King. I forget which one of those high schools. Is Henny from Michigan? I know he played at Michigan.
I don't know if he's from Michigan or not. Yeah. Just anyways, interesting speculation. And then, we know that, Kentucky's a bunch of losers. Arizona's a bunch of losers. Nevada's a bunch of But yeah, I mean, and looking at this chart too, I'm kind of not surprised by the big numbers, right? 9 guys from Texas, 7 guys from Ohio, 8 guys from Florida, that all checks out.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
And actually because I lived in Texas for 3 months, that adage is pretty true, dude. Their highways, 5 lanes, speed limits 85 miles an hour there. I'm I'm going 5 over 90 right now. This is awesome.
Texas does it right. John, is there, so obviously, I mean, one of the best days of the year, the Super Bowl, but is there any low-key players that you think that people should look out for that maybe aren't necessarily considered stars on either of these teams that are going to make a big difference? Could be defense, could be offense. Is there any players you think people should kind of look out for to make a name for themselves?
This is a little bit of a cop-out, but I think that the Eagles' offensive line as a unit is going to be a massive difference maker. And I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you can call him a star or not, but you guys have heard me beating this dude's drum the entire year, which is C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I just watched him play at the Saints, and he's kind of that third guy they talk about when you're talking about the Eagles secondary. But
Yeah.
he's a huge difference maker before he got injured in the regular season, and he's back to firing on all cylinders. So I think he's huge. KC's side, Karlaftis has kind of been quiet, I'd say, like the past, as far as the playoffs go. I think he's going to be a huge difference maker. And I also think that, like, some of the more low key offensive players for KC, right? Like, maybe like Hardman or something like that, like might actually come out and tear it up too, because they do such a good job of spreading the ball around. So that's kind of my short list.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. If things go the Eagles' way, I could see exactly what you're talking about. CJ, I think Gardner Johnson's a huge difference maker on whether he plays well or not, and if they're going to be successful, because I think he's going to have some tough asks in terms of what they're going to ask him to do against that offense. I think for the Chiefs, I think it's going to be Kadarius Toney. He was banged up in the Bengals game. It seems like he's going to play. Barring anything setback wise, if he plays in that game, I think they're going to find ways to get him the ball in space. And he's electric when he has the ball in his hands. And I think it's going to take after the catch plays to really separate them from the Eagles. I think he's going to be for them. It's been Marquez Valdez Scantling the last few games. I think it's going to be Kadarius Toney in this game. Patrick Mahomes is going to. I also want to note that Patrick Mahomes, obviously, I'm not going to pick him as an X factor. He's going to be the damn MVP of the game if they win. But he's going to be able to move around and scramble like we're used to seeing him do. I think that a lot of people think that ankle injury is still going to be. I think he's going to come out and look completely 100% healthy in this game. I think these 2 weeks off are huge. I think he's been getting the treatment. I think he showed glimpses of what he's able to do against Cincinnati, although he was limited. But he's going to be able to extend plays like people didn't expect. And that's going to be a huge difference in the game, because the Eagles are probably prepping as if he can't move around a lot. Because why wouldn't you? But I think he's going to come out and just like play like he's not even injured at all. And it's going to change how they have to prepare.
And too, like, what you can kind of get away with medically with those situations pop up as far as painkillers go. Like, if there is pain there, he probably isn't going to feel it for that.
Dude, he's going to be. Think about the adrenaline, dude. I get adrenaline like playing pickup basketball. Think about the adrenaline of walking in, like I'm about to play in the Super
freaking Super Bowl. Yeah, it's got to be nuts. So, yeah, I'm so stoked about it. I'm having a Super Bowl party, and like you said, right, like with it being a holiday, I'm having a Super Bowl party, and I'd say probably relatively small, like 10 to 12 people, maybe. Probably half of them, if I'm being generous, are football fans. But when I sent that invite out, like, everybody was stoked about it, right? They're super excited.
It's supposed to be, man.
And I just love it, because like it's the one, selfishly too, it's like the one day where I just get to be like an unabashed football fan to every single person I talk to that day, and it's totally socially appropriate, right? So other
John,
times, sorry, go ahead.
Do you have? I know we've talked about like early Super Bowl memories, like that Patriots-Giants game we remember, but do you have, I guess there's like, just name off a few Super Bowl games in your lifetime, in our lifetimes, that stand out to you, or plays that stand out to you. Like, I think people like they're like stuck in my memory, some of the plays and some of the moments that I like. So some of the best moments of my life have just been watching this game.
I remember almost every moment of 28-3 like it was yesterday. And I think like a lot of people that probably like I literally remember having a side conversation with Roncelli, not Stevie, but his older brother Tom, about like recovering from like having an ear infection before the game started, kind of thing. Like literally every conversation, every little thing. I remember texting Hannah being like, "Hey, don't count out Tom Brady just because of the score right now. Like, he can make something happen here." Like, I remember the food. I remember who won squares, like stuff like that, right? So yeah, that's a huge one. Like I said, helmet catch was a really big one. The Harbaugh Bowl. Right, that was a really good one. Power going out and all that.
What a weird dude. What a weird.
That was a weird Super Bowl. And then one of the more exciting ones I think too was Patriots Eagles. I remember that one because that was freshman year of college.
Philly special.
Philly special. I won $1,000 bet on that one, so that was killer. I took Eagles in the over, I believe, which is actually also what I took for this game coming up, which the over's high. It's 49.
Yeah,
So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, so those are, just a few. But I'd say out of all of them, the one that I have the most vivid memories of is 28-3. Every little detail I remember about 28-3.
So that's funny you say the 28-3 because I have a few, but I'll start with that one because that's what you started with. I don't remember the comeback. Like I remember some of the plays. I actually watched. It popped up on my Twitter feed like it was like a quick short clip of the comeback, like just that basically last quarter and a half of the game where they made the comeback and then won in overtime. So like it all came back to me as I was watching, but I really don't remember the plays. I remember the Julian Edelman catch, right, where the ball was tipped up in the air and no one thought he caught it, and he was able to trap the ball just before it hits the ground. One of the best catches ever, right, especially considering the circumstances. And I remember we were at our good buddy Tyler Winicke's house, and I was rooting for the Patriots hard. Most of the people there were Tom Brady haters and were talking shit to me the whole game, and I had to sit there and take it. And as the comeback started, I was able to run my mouth, which I love to do. And then as that catch happened, you just had to feel like it was going to happen. And I jumped when he caught it. And I was one of the people saying, he caught it. And everyone's like, no, he didn't, dude. No, he didn't. They really didn't complete it. And I jumped and I hit the ceiling. My head hit the ceiling and there was a dent in its ceiling from my head. And I instantly fell to the ground. I was like holding my head and they're like, dude, are you okay? And I was like, dude, I think I just like have a concussion from hitting my head on the ceiling. So that was one of the coolest memories I have. And then honestly, my favorite game in our lifetime was the Steelers Cardinals Super Bowl. I think that's one of the best Super Bowls of all time. And I just remember like so many, like you said, you remember so many of the plays from that 28-3 game. I just remember Larry Fitzgerald looking at the scoreboard as he was running for that, 80-yard touchdown, the slant. I was rooting for the Cardinals throughout the playoffs because I just loved Larry Fitzgerald and he was just on a hot streak of just mossing
Dude,
people.
he was something else.
Making incredible plays.
A couple years after that too. I mean, he was just
right.
Really on top of his game.
And then the James Harrison, 99 yards, and he almost gets caught by Fitzgerald. And then the crazy one of the best catches in Super Bowl history, Santonio Holmes, and that throw from Ben Roethlisberger in the corner of the end zone, and the toe drag. And no one thought he actually caught it. It's those catches where like no one thinks there's no way that was caught, right? And then you go back and look at it in slow motion, like holy shit, right? Those are like the moments I think. That Super Bowl to me was one of the best of all time, even though I was rooting for the Cardinals. Like that game was just incredible. Two really good teams.
Quick shout out to Larry Fitzgerald for just every part of his career was very humble. He was never the guy that everybody was talking about. He was a very good person from what I can tell, and then very quietly retired. Like he just kind of slipped. Larry Fitzgerald out of the NFL
is one of my favorites of all time. And I think one of the craziest stats, like when you throw out sports stats, not even just football, sports stats, the dude had more tackles as a wide receiver than dropped passes in his career.
That's crazy.
Do you know how incredible that is? Like that dude had hundreds. That dude probably had over, I'm assuming, he had to have over 1,000 catches. I don't have it I don't know his exact stats. He had probably over 120 touchdowns in his career. And the dude had more tackles than dropped passes. You know how like sure-handed you have to be? Think about all the contested, people draped all over him, one-handed.
1,400 receptions, 17,000 yards, 121 touchdowns was his career.
Yeah, so I wasn't terribly far off. It's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah.
And to have more tackles as a receiver, that's a joke. That is an absolute joke.
It's ridiculous. And look,
that's sickening.
I know that Mark loves Larry Fitzgerald, which is why I brought it up, because this dude, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to dig on Mark. This dude was drafting Larry Fitzgerald well after his prime, way too high in fantasy football for years.
I got to have him on my roster, man.
Oh, it's so good. But yeah, look, like I said, we appreciate everybody who's been along on this journey. 27 episodes, the entire NFL season, every single week. I think we missed maybe 1 week out of the entire NFL season. So yeah, we appreciate everybody that's been along for the ride. I think this channel, this podcast, our shorts have seen a ton of growth. And now, look, we get to come back next week and talk about who won the Super Bowl and talk about the offseason. And don't get us wrong. Like, Mark and I are just as stoked to be talking about that. We love football. It truly is a sport that doesn't have a true offseason. 365 days a year. There's always something going on. There's always something to talk about.
Season 1 coming to an end. What an awesome first year, honestly, John. I don't think even you and I both didn't really think we would have as much fun and have as many people tune in as we've had. And some of the great guests we've had, and we're gonna have guests throughout the off season. Season 2 officially will start of the show after the Super Bowl, and we're excited to keep doing this, man.
Absolutely. Oh, also, because I have a promise from Evan, we will have pre-orders available for a merch drop by the Super Bowl. So anybody that's watching, make sure we're looking out for that, right? It will probably, so usually the way that we like to do this, because Mark and I, believe it or not, don't have like $4,000 to pay out of pocket to go and get 300 shirts printed or whatever.
John probably does. He's low-key rich.
No, I'm not. Stop it. But we're going to get pre-orders going so that we know how much demand there is off the bat. And then, it'll probably take like a month or two to get them printed and shipped. But the designs are going to be sick. We hired a mutual friend of ours, Evan Pulaski, who's one of the best artists I know. He's a very gifted artist. He's one of those people that makes everything look easy. Everything
he touches becomes like really, really well done, cool stuff. Like,
yeah,
whether you like, sports or not, I'm sure I haven't seen it. I don't know if you have, but his designs
he's still working on them, but he promised he'll have the designs by the Super Bowl. So we will be unveiling those either before or by the day of the Super Bowl. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, man, let's enjoy Sunday, right? It's enjoy the best day of the year.
The cap, right? The nightcap of the season. Let's enjoy it. Hopefully it's a good game. John's got the Eagles. I have the Chiefs. It seems like most people that I've talked to are picking the Eagles. I've heard a lot of Go Birds. It should be a good game. It should be exciting. You're witnessing history every Super Bowl because they truly are some of the most historic memories that people have each year are the Super Bowl games. Another cool memory I forgot to mention, John. My sister Sage was born during the Eagles Patriots Super Bowl, not the one you talked about with the Philly special. Where Owens came back and played on a broken leg.
And it wasn't is her birthday today or yesterday?
It was yesterday. Yeah.
Yesterday. Yeah. So wild that she was 18, because I have known Sage since she was like a baby.
I'm sure my dad was super thrilled that my mom went into labor the day of the Super Bowl, hours before the Super Bowl started. Like, God damn it. You couldn't wait till tomorrow. Right. That's what I would have thought. Once you're on
not even tomorrow,
4,
just 6 more hours, please.
Dude, and I remember me, Cole, and Anthony were like little turds. We were like, oh, we don't want what? If we want to watch the game, and we had a babysitter come over and put us to bed at 7 o'clock. We're like, dude, what the hell is going on? Super Bowl's on. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and we were young, but we remember they brought Sage home. We were like, we don't want her. She ruined the Super Bowl. But we've come a long way since then, 18 years. So
right. That's awesome. Well, look, we'll wrap up this episode. Everybody enjoy their Sunday, and we will see you next week. Peace.
Enjoy the Super Bowl, guys. Peace.